Awesome. Well, we're about at time, so I'm going to get started because we have so much to cover. Welcome to our case study on Tern bicycles. We're going to show you how D9 is enabling Tern's business teams, their global distributors, everyone at the organization to update and manage over 45 multilingual websites without developers. My name is Michael Myers. I'm the managing director at Tag One Consulting. And before I joined Tag One, I was a client for many, many years. I started working in Drupal over 17 years ago when I started the first venture-backed Drupal-based startup, was CTO of the first top 100 website running Drupal, and spent 5 years at Acquia as VP of Developer Relations and Marketing before joining Tag One. Tag One was a huge part of my success at all of these organizations, and so I joined the team and I run sales and marketing. For those of you who aren't familiar with Tag One, we work with many technologies and are the #2 all-time contributor to Drupal with the largest concentration of core contributors at any organization. We're also an enterprise supporting partner of the DA. And on top of that, we donate a full-time senior resource to help run and manage Drupal.org, all of the websites and infrastructure and tooling that enable the community to build Drupal. If your company profits from Drupal, please financially support the project. Fund the Drupal Association, a module maintainer. Please help continue for Drupal to thrive. It's really important. Terry Chen, the brand director at Tern, owned and led the migration project and helped put together this presentation. She joined Tern in 2011 and leads their marketing and creative teams. She led Tern's team in building the most successful virtual product launch in bike industry history. And prior to Tern, Terry was the product marketing manager for U Lead Systems. Here she is to say hello.
大家好，我叫陈淑芬，我住在台北，台湾。现在是早上3点半，有一点点早，所以我没有办法参加 DrupalCon. Hi, my name is Terry Chen, and I currently live in Taipei, Taiwan. By the time you watch this video, it'll be about 3:30 in the morning for me in Taipei. And so that's a little bit too late and a little bit too early for me to stay up. And that is why I'm unable to attend DrupalCon. I'm currently the brand director at Tern Bicycles, which is a brand that designs and manufactures electric and folding bikes for everyday use. We have people all over the world that use our bikes to commute to work, to go grocery shopping, to take their children to school. And I personally take my son every weekend to soccer practice with our bikes. We pride ourselves in designing bikes and accessories that help people drive less and cycle more. I'm very excited to have Michael share with everyone here how Tag One helped us keep and maintain a fully and highly functional website with Drupal 6 for about 10 years. And with their assistance, how we were able to finally upgrade and migrate our site to Drupal 9. Thank you very much, and I will turn this presentation over to Michael.
All right, so we're going to cover a lot here. We're going to start with an intro to Tern, why they first adopted Drupal 10 years ago, how they navigated Drupal 6 going end of life, which is a topic that a lot of Drupal 7 users are wrestling with right now. We're going to go over the business goals for the project, why they decided to continue using Drupal and migrate to 9. We're going to show off a little bit of the site, and I urge you to check it out yourself, as well as some of the really cool technical solutions that we built to meet those goals. We'll touch on our approach to migrations and how we manage working a world apart. I encourage you to put your questions in the chat. We'll save some time at the end, and if we run out of time, I'll hang out at the Tag One booth for a while as well. So here's Terry to tell you a little bit more about Tern.
As I mentioned in my intro slide, Tern is committed to building a more sustainable future by designing bicycles that help change the way people move, get around cities, and in their daily lives. We were founded in 2011, and Tern is headquartered here in Taipei, Taiwan. And we have branch offices in Finland, the US, the UK, and in China. And we have about 78 team members worldwide. Our product portfolio includes cargo bikes, electric cargo bikes, folding bikes, electric folding bikes, and stylish street bikes. Our bikes are distributed in over 45 countries around the world, and we work with over 35 different distributors that represents these countries. Because each distributor purchases a unique product portfolio, whether it be an accessory that they want to sell in their countries, or maybe a bike model with a certain color or spec or configuration, we needed to have a website that allowed them to showcase their individual product lineup. We also needed to have a website that allowed our distributors to translate pages and to control and maintain their individual country website without interfering or messing up another country's website.
So let's talk about why Tern first chose Drupal 10 years ago. Tern Bicycles was founded in 2011 as a new brand, and they needed a site really fast. The team had used Drupal in the past, and so they were confident that it would meet both their immediate needs as well as their long-term needs. And while Drupal has a steeper initial learning curve, its overall capabilities were really well worth that upfront investment. No platform could match Drupal's low-code capabilities. The site building features that include things like the ability to create a content bicycle type and the fields associated with that, creating a page listing bicycles, being able to translate all those bicycles, and do all of that by pointing and clicking with no code and no dependencies or developers required. The most difficult decision for Tern actually wasn't should they use Drupal, but what version of Drupal should they use. If you remember, Drupal 7 was scheduled to go live later in the year in 2011, but unfortunately some of the key modules wouldn't be ready for about another year. So ultimately, Tern decided to use Drupal 6 so that they could launch quickly and with confidence that it was going to be a really stable platform with all the features and functionality that they needed. They rarely needed developers to update or manage the site after launch. It's pretty amazing what they've done. Drupal's site building capabilities really delivered what they needed, and their business and marketing teams were in complete control. About 5 years later, though, in 2016, D6 reached end of life. And users of Drupal 7 are going through this right now, trying to figure out, what do you do after your platform goes end of life and is no longer supported by the community? Well, Tern's D6 site was exceeding expectations. So from a business standpoint and from a functionality standpoint, they didn't really need or want to migrate. And migrations are really time consuming and expensive. So from a company standpoint, there was way better, places that they could invest that money at that time to grow the business. They weren't looking to invest in their website. But even if they wanted to migrate, the key modules weren't mature enough and didn't exist yet. And so it would have been really expensive to migrate compared to waiting. So there was a big incentive to wait for them. And a big reason for Tern adopting Drupal was, freedom from being held hostage by technology, right? The independence of, reliance on developers, business people being in control. And they didn't want to be forced to, upgrade. And with Drupal's extended support, that's just what they were able to achieve. And so Tag One's extended support enabled Tern to securely run and manage their D6 site for another 5 years after EOL, a 10-year return on investment, which is just astounding. So if you're running Drupal 7, please know that you can extend and run 7 for at least another 7 years if you want to, using the Drupal 7 extended support program, and that you can make a business decision to upgrade when you need to. Speaking of business decisions, let's talk about what Tern wanted to do with their new website. What were their goals for upgrading? All of their stats had been growing since inception, and there were some really noticeable jumps. In 2017, traffic increased around 30% when they launched their GSD electric cargo bike, which was hugely successful. And with increased interest in cycling during the pandemic, monthly unique users went up 130% this time last year. Very interesting is that Tern's traffic is highly global, really distributed, as you can see here in this chart. And they're seeing explosive growth, over 240% in many of their markets and regions around the world. They had long been wanting to, do a major revamp of their website, and with less travel and events going on during the pandemic, Tern had an opportunity to focus marketing budget on their ever-increasing popular online presence and do their project. So some of the key reasons for upgrading Drupal and what they wanted in a new site, they wanted a faster site. They wanted to provide even more relevant information to users, and they wanted the site to be even easier to use for consumers. Distributors, that's how they get their bikes out there, through distributors and then dealers. So distributors was a top priority for them, and Tern wanted to be able to enable them to do more, like making translations and managing content and the site so much easier. Of course, there were tons of feature requests and feature enhancements. Site building, which had made the company so successful, it had to be even easier for non-technical people to update the site in the future. They wanted even more control than they could previously. And again, post-launch, they didn't think or want developers to be needed for managing the day-to-day of the site. And they don't have to have that, They only want developers to come in for enhancements and adding functionality. A big part of this is limiting proprietary code. So it's really important to Tern in this project that we either use Drupal's built-in capabilities or enhance Drupal's built-in capabilities so that they weren't saddled with a lot of proprietary code. And lastly, Tern didn't just lead this project, but they were heavily engaged in participating in it. And so, a big part of it was for them to learn the technology and make sure that they could own and control this independently and achieve all their goals. So Tern considered all their options when they were doing their upgrade process, and they chose to rebuild on Drupal. So why did they stick with Drupal? They could have gone to any other platform. From a development standpoint, D9 is an entirely different platform than D6 and 7. And so given this, it behooves companies to do that kind of in-depth analysis. But ultimately, they chose Drupal for many of the reasons that they originally chose Drupal. All of that no-code and low-code functionality had really matured and improved beyond what they had originally. New tools like Layout Builder would give them even more control, and their distributors more control over the layout of pages and the content. With over 45 international websites, there have been massive improvements in internationalization and translation workflows. From a user standpoint, internally with their distributors, while the underlying technology was different, a lot of the terminology and concepts were the same, which made it easier for the people actually using the site to migrate. And not having to, deal with what they did in the past. They were on Drupal 6 for 10 years. One of the really exciting things about 9 is that the seamless upgrade path from 9 to 10, 10 to 11. So they expect to get another decade out of Drupal with this investment, with seamless upgrades getting more and more functionality over time. And lastly, and I think this is really important for organizations. We had worked together for a long time. Tern had confidence in a partner that could deliver. An upgrade is time-consuming and expensive, and it's important for you to know that you have a technology partner that's going to deliver. Give you a sneak peek of the new site. I really suggest you check it out because we don't have a lot of time. The new site is designed by Terry, and it's beautiful. It's rich with this imagery that puts the focus on the products and the culture of Tern and the people who ride their bikes. When you first hit the site, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, you're directed to your country in the default language for that country. And the site is broken down into 6 main sections with a lot within it. I'm just going to touch on the bike section real quick to give you a taste. Bike section shows off all of Tern's platforms, different bikes like the GSD system, and all the individual bike models within that platform. There's this great filter where you can find the bike that best matches your interests. Like I'm looking for a commuter bike with a seat for someone to sit on in the back. And then there's this new comparison feature, which lets you check out the bikes, and then you can dig into a bicycle and learn everything about its accessories and, you know, its technology, and get reviews and other information. So please, you know, check out the new site. It's really beautiful. And you know, here's where things get complicated with the new site. And that's, you know, the 45 plus multilingual websites that are going on, you know, that you're not necessarily seeing. And I'm trying to show these off in the different slides that we have here, are the photos. As Terry mentioned, each distributor exclusively owns one or more country-specific sites, and it's up to them what bicycles they offer, what configurations of those bicycles they offer in any particular country. In addition to all of that configuration, they can add pages, remove pages, change layouts, and Tern has control over everything that they can or can't do. And, you know, if you're, you know, dealing with a country like Canada, for example, that has French and English, you know, most countries have at least, you know, 2 languages. That's a lot to manage. So, you know, even a distributor that just has one country like Canada with 2 languages, they're juggling a lot of content. And if you have multiple countries, or your Tern managing all of these distributors, that's a lot to deal with. And we're going to show off some cool tools that we built to manage that. So here are some really cool solutions that we built to meet Tern's goals. All of them are open source, so that you can benefit from these two with your websites. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Layout Builder. You know, it gives you the ability to have tremendous control over what's on the page. I'm logged in here, and I'm going to show you how to edit the bike page just by clicking Layout. You know, let's say a new accessory launch, and I want to feature it at the top of the page. Well, I can easily add a new block, add photos or videos, and just as easily move content around the page or remove content. And again, no code, no deployments, very easy to update your site. But while layout is really impressive, it offers very little control over the theme or the style. And Tern's site is beautiful. You know, that's really important to them and a lot of organizations. And, you know, there are ways to get around this, like embedding HTML and CSS directly into your content. And while that's a nice hack, it's a really bad practice to be hard coding things all over the place. And so in this project, what we did is we extended Layout Builder's capabilities to address this feature gap. We added components to Drupal, which is a concept that's really popular in other frameworks like Laravel. A component can be anything on a page. So in this simple example, underneath Corey Basket there, you have a really simple component that we called tagline. Now, using our new system, you can control its CSS and styles via configuration. Again, in this basic example, you can change the classes of what this tagline is going to look like on various different devices. And this functionality is going to be open sourced in the near future so that you can use it too. It gives you a lot of control over the look and feel of your site, but it doesn't yet go that last little bit and give you complete control. You can't edit the classes without editing code, but I'm going to come back to it and come back to this in a minute and show you how we're going to make that happen. But first, remember that country selector up in the right-hand corner? Well, that's a component too. And the really cool thing is that components can have actions that you can control. So this component on action, has an on-click action that shows you a drop-down of all of the country language options that you can choose from. And so for another client project that we're working on currently, we're extending this layout capability that we built to give site builders that complete control that everybody wants, the ability to add or edit new styles or create and modify actions as configuration with no code updates. It's really low code and super intuitive. You don't even need to know CSS to make simple changes. We also use the Alpine.js framework to make adding and editing actions super simple. So you don't need to be a JavaScript developer to make really cool things happen, again, all via configuration. Simple example, here I removed the word uppercase and changed the text from gray to black. There's a real-time preview, so you can see exactly what's happening and what it's going to look like. And you know, the really cool thing here is that this is going to be open source in the near future when we're further along in this other client project. And we do this for a lot of our clients and projects. It has a huge impact for everybody that we work with, as well as users of Drupal. So you can benefit from this as well. There's a great talk coming up later in DrupalCon on components on Thursday with Peta and Fabian. Please check it out if you want to learn more about it. You can also learn more about components in our Tag One Team Talks, our podcast and blog. We cover a bunch of other exciting things like adding real-time collaboration to Drupal and performance and scalability and load testing with our open source Goose framework. So please dig in. I talked earlier about managing translations across so many different websites and how time-consuming that can be if you want to update content. And so we added the ability to granularly bulk copy translations across websites. Now, this is really similar to how Vue's bulk edit works. You know, you select the content in the languages that you want to update and you hit synchronize. You can sort and filter to get at just the content that you want. And then you pick the language that you want to copy from, and you can choose the individual fields that you want to sync. So you can take, you know, a Spanish translation that you mastered and, copied across Uruguay and Paraguay, and then update it for individual local changes. So you're doing really much less work in individual countries. Again, minimize proprietary code, improve Drupal as a platform. So this was open source as well. You can use this today. And for the same reason that we've been talking about, not wanting to be held hostage by technology, easy upgrade paths, Tern really wanted to minimize their technical debt as part of this project. So that's something we really carefully managed. A small time investment up front to make some simple changes that made the site more D10 compatible is going to reduce their future effort. Tern isn't as reliant on developers down the line. And before you know it, D10 is going to be here. We're talking almost a year away. It's amazing how time flies. So as a result, their D10 upgrade process is going to be really easy. We patched over 60 contributed modules in the process, so making them more D10 ready, which helps everyone in the community. Ultimately, there were only 6 issues that we couldn't address because they just couldn't yet be deprecated in D9. But we have a list, and we're managing to our technical debt, and we know exactly what we need to do when we come back to this in the future. Example, core jQuery's library is going to be removed and deprecated in D10. So we just switched out, that code for the core JS cookie library. So any modules using the, the jQuery cookie, we just changed them over to the JS core cookie. Very simple. Let's talk about data migrations. I think anyone who's done a large platform upgrade or migration project knows that the actual data migration itself is one of the most time-consuming and challenging aspects of a project. So I really want to touch on some cool things that we did in our approach to migrations. We always have migration resources working in parallel. They start early and they want to have a clear sense of what needs to get done and make sure that they have the time to do it. In this case, migration was led and owned by a single developer working part-time, with other developers helping out along the way. We split things up so that we had really granular control. So for example, when you're doing a migration run, you could include or exclude very specific data sets and only process what you needed. Another really cool thing is the migration system could support multiple sources. Of course, the main source was their existing D6 site, but we also enabled them to work in spreadsheets, which made it significantly more efficient to handle the large amount of data that they had and the changes and importing new data. And we set up a more stable version of our development site. And so this enabled them to work manually in the new system, independent of the constant change going on in the background. And so the migration system could pull from any or all of these systems in any given run and then insert into any environment. And it also supported exception handling, which I'll come back to and explain in more detail in a minute. So handling data migrations has a lot of challenges. Just to give you an example, the sheer amount of data, over 500,000 record sets built up over 10 years, with data formatting and other changes in that data leading to a lot of variability we needed to detect and count for. All the new functionality and just changing from 6 to 9, while 80% of the entities were able to map one-to-one for the most part, the remainder needed considerable remapping. Permissions, critically important. When you introduce new features and functionality like groups that change access control, you really need to be meticulous in your conversion and your testing to make sure you don't give people access to things that they shouldn't have. Multilingual changed a lot from 6 to 9. In 6, every node and every translated node had its own NID. But in 9, there's only one ID for all of a node's translations. And with over 45 multilingual sites and multiple languages per country, that was a lot to kind of pull together and manage. And another big thing was data validation. We created migrate plugins to do validation for different things. For instance, we check dealer addresses. Every country has hundreds of dealers, thousands of dealers, and we wanted to make sure that their state and country code, for example, was perfectly mapped to ISO standards, kind of clean up that data. And any exceptions that were detected were then exported via spreadsheet so that Tern could manually review, fix them, and then re-import just that data back through that spreadsheet system. So really powerful what it enabled them to do. Another challenge in that variability of data and how things change is that in the D6 site, a lot of data was in a single string. So all of the bike specifications in certain cases, were just stored as a lot of text. So for example, the data about the distance from the seat post to the handlebar, all that information is one field. So we had write a lot of regular expressions to split up that info into individual values so that we can support things like enhanced search, metric conversions, that really cool bike filter that we showed off. The last thing that I want to touch on real quick, I know we're running out of time, is another big challenge, and that was working a world apart. There was a 15-hour spread between a lot of the resources, which really limited our overlapping hours. So we relied heavily on collaboration tools to try and get things done. We did as much as possible asynchronously using things like recorded sprint demos that could later be viewed at a better time for you, and stand-ups done asynchronously in Slack. Really critical was planning. We tried to identify things in advance that would require a lot of time and get started on them early, or a lot extra time, so we didn't run into blockers or large schedule slips. But a big goal for us was to work together as one team collaboratively, make sure that Tern can own that technology. And so ultimately, everyone had to go out of their way to accommodate each other. So we're talking about a lot of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. meetings on weekends, for months to get this done. And so ultimately, this project wouldn't have been successful without the team's dedication. Terry is just inspiring and insanely prolific in what she gets done. She and her team are really amazing, and I want to thank them for the opportunity to work together on such an awesome project. And I want to thank the Tag One team for all their help in getting us here. And thank you guys for joining us for the presentation. We should have a few minutes left for Q&A, and we'll do that via chat. And if we run out of time, we can hop over to the Tag One booth so that others can use the room. Awesome. Cool. So there is a tab for Q&A. That is pretty cool. Any idea, how do I read these things? They're grayed out. Select questions. Here we go. Any idea where we might see updates on these open source components? Coming from Richard Allen. Yeah, Richard, check out our blog. We'll announce them and make sure that you can find them. Definitely. And Fabian, I'm sure, is going to talk more about that in his presentation. I know that some of the work we're doing on that other client project is months away. It's a really big project, and we're in the early phases, so it's gonna trickle. But there are definitely some things that are coming sooner rather than later. Another individual said, any ideas where we might see the updates? Yep, same thing. 45 plus multilingual sites using a setup, something like domain module. Okay, so John, yeah, in the past it used domain access in D6. The new site was actually handled via translations. So each individual country language combination is a translation, like Uruguay Spanish, or Canada English, Canada French are two translations, and each of those are considered a site. Are components a custom type of entity? Aaron asks. Aaron, I'm going to have to defer you to Fabian for that. I would recommend that you check out his talk or the info on our blog. I don't want to misspeak and give you wrong information on that. That goes into a level of detail that I'm not familiar with. Awesome. Well, we're about at time. I really appreciate you guys joining. Love the questions. I'm going to move over to the Tag One booth, and we will take the rest of your questions there. Wait, I do see you mentioned regex for migration. Did you still find a lot of manual cleanup from Timothy? Yeah, Timothy, we definitely had exception handling, getting those regex right. That's why we had that granular control. We were repeatedly processing information over and over again. There's so much data that we couldn't possibly do it manually. So we did have to rely on a lot of automated systems, but like that ISO example, we couldn't automate everything, or at least it wasn't practical or, cost effective to automate everything. And so we definitely did try and segment out and do them manually. So I would say almost everything automated with some exceptions that were more on the practical standpoint. So we're over time. I see there's more questions in here. Please join us over in the Tag One booth if you want to keep the conversation going. Can't thank you guys enough for joining us. Please remember to support Drupal and Drupal developers and enjoy the rest of your DrupalCon. Take care, everybody.